Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. I trust you had a great weekend. My brother was visiting from Chicago, and he was describing the fifth largest snowfall ever in Chicago's history to me, and that was quite an interesting story. It was great to see him. I interviewed with Bonnie Tunya, who's always extremely well informed, for CNBC this morning. Thank you, Bonnie. And I'd also like to thank Deritu Gay, who is the World Bank, Kenya, Eritrea, and one other country which slips up on my mind, the representative here. And she invited me to breakfast with some others, with the members of her board, and that was extremely interesting as well. Thank you for that, Deritu. Home thoughts, Valentine's Day. I have a wife and 3 daughters, and it has so many different complexities now. And I sort of like, it's bittersweet, I think, this photograph. Celebration of Valentine's Day in Kabul. Photo by COSAR, AFP. Really a fantastic photograph, and I like this one as well. A Calm Boat for Silent Waters by Howell Cruz dos Santos. And I thought that was a very beautiful photograph as well. And then I like this quote from a short story I read over the weekend, and I suppose it's because of Neruda. You try every trick in the book to keep her. You write her letters. You drive her to work. You quote Neruda. Political reflections. Iran's Ayatollah sends new letter to Obama amid nuclear talks. Iran's paramount political figure, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has responded to overtures from President Obama seeking better relations by sending secret communications of his own to the White House. The Iranian cleric wrote to Mr. Obama in recent weeks in response to an October presidential letter that raised the possibility of US-Iranian cooperation in fighting Islamic State if a nuclear deal is secured. According to Iranian diplomat, the Supreme Leader's response was respectful but non-committal, the diplomat said. And I remain of the view that Havana might well prove the hors d'oeuvre and Tehran the main dish. And I still think President Obama, and I think, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu was prepared to go all the way to Congress tells you that there is some urgency, or at least he believes there's some urgency around needing to fend that rapprochement off. CCTV News tweeted update: Danish police investigating the deadly Copenhagen shooting as a terrorist act. Gunman's photo released. And I said, the fat tail in a population of more than 7 billion is in fact a big absolute number. Dominic Strauss-Kahn leaving his hotel to attend the trial, photographed by Reuters. Quite a telling photograph, isn't it? Fabrice Paskowski, a Lille entrepreneur who Strauss-Kahn described as a very good friend, told one woman that he wanted to organize giant orgies at the Lycée, presumably when Strauss-Kahn became president of France. This photograph got my attention. Medical staff at the Hastings Ebola Treatment Center escort a man in the throes of Ebola-induced delirium back into the isolation ward from which he escaped in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Picture taken November 23rd, 2014. And then this quote caught my attention from Reuters. We're in Donald Rumsfeld land, where there are known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and few knowns, he says. And because the stakes are so high and so much for so many millions hangs on the outcomes of the present crises, efforts at resolution keep throwing up more known unknowns. That's why this week the unknowns remain as unknown as ever. Next week there is a known. There will be more meetings. Quite funny. The talks lasted more than 17 hours, during which a couple of buckets of coffee were drunk, and took place in what Ukraine's foreign minister described as a difficult psychological atmosphere. Outside another room was a taped up sheet of paper with the words 1 hour sleep, 3 hours awake, half an hour on knees, half an hour sitting down, 1 hour standing, half an hour knees, written on it. At bottom it read repeat. And that was really quite shocking. It's an article called The Dark Science of Interrogation. It's a very interesting article in point of fact, saying about how this kind of very coercive interrogation has no effect. China's national flag raised during the opening ceremony of the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games at the National Stadium. I like that photograph. International markets, the markets don't appear to believe the Fed, talking about a significant difference between the interest rate path that Federal Reserve officials sketched in December, the last time they made public projections, and the rates implied by trading in futures markets. The markets see a smaller, more gradual increase in interest rates than the now famous dots that show where Fed officials expect interest rates to go. I, for one, think that Yellen is going to hike mid-year, and that's because the US economy will be absolutely booming by then. Euro is at 114.17, dollar index 93.98, Japanese yen 118.62, Swissy 0.9296, the pound is at 154.10, Aussie 0.7781, India rupee 62.215, South Korean won 1102.92, Rial 283.35, Egyptian pound 761.18, South African rand 1166.80. There's a chap I follow at JP Morgan who's quite bullish on the rand at the moment. He's pretty good actually on the charts, he's saying. Let's do a rebound. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. We've been backing and filling a little bit, and it seems to be shaking some of the confidence of the dollar bulls, but I think we'll resume an upward thrust at any moment, and it might well be this Wednesday after we've seen comments out of the Federal Reserve. Euro dollar 114.17, a little bit of a bounce, a little bit of a recovery here, but I still think we're headed to parity. Gold, that's been moving on up, last at 1233.98, but I think bounces are for selling. Crude oil, $53.44 when I came in this morning, looks toppy now to me. Coming to Sub-Saharan Africa, my weekly piece was about the African markets in 2015. Edwin Lefebvre, whom I admire, who wrote the seminal Reminiscences of a Stock Market Operator in 1923, said, "You can spot, for instance, whether buying is only a trifle better than the selling. A battle goes on in the stock market and the tape is your telescope," he says. "You can depend upon it 7 out of 10 cases." Him again. "That is how I first came to take an interest in the message of the tape. The fluctuations were from the first associated in my mind with upward or downward movements. Of course, there is always a reason for fluctuations, but the tape does not concern itself with the why and wherefore. It doesn't go into explanations. I didn't ask the tape why when I was 14, and I don't ask it today at 40. The reason for what a certain stock does day to day may not be known for 2 or 3 days, or weeks or months, but what the dickens does that matter? Your business is with the tape now, not tomorrow. The reason can wait, but you must act instantly or be left. Time and again, I see this happen." Now let's take a look at the African tape, and let's start with Nigeria, because after all, it is now, after last year's rebasing, the elephant in the sub-Saharan African room. Nigeria's central bank chief said on Thursday there was no need to panic about a slide in the currency after figures showed the bank had been burning through more than $110 million a day in a vain attempt to defend it. In my experience, when a central banker tells you there is no need to panic, it actually is time to panic, which is what investors are doing big time. The Naira hit a record low Thursday of 206.60 and has lost 25% of its value versus the dollar in just 90 days. An equivalent move in the shilling would have it trading at close to 115. This is a meltdown in the Naira, pure and simple. On January 21st, I said to Reuters the currency is headed to 220, and Emefiele's finger in the dike strategy is about to be overwhelmed by a tsunami. That tsunami to which I referred to is now in play. The Nigerian all-share has slumped 20.41% this year and is the worst performing index in the world in 2015. Investors are taking a more than 40% haircut when you account for the currency move, and frankly there is no turnaround in sight, not with a delayed presidential poll and a neck-and-neck position of 42% for each candidate. Nigeria's woes are entirely correlated to the oil price, and it is oil that created a negative spillover in Nigeria just as it did in Russia, Venezuela, Angola and many other places. Here our oil exploration is a no-go. Tullow Oil declared that they are decommissioning 3 out of 4 rigs that they had in Kenya. We will gradually wind the 3 rigs down throughout the year. We've still allocated significant capital to Kenya and plan to continue exploration at a more modest pace, as you'd expect with the oil price, which says it all. Now all this destabilization and interference in Naira land has sent monies that were marked with the tag destination Lagos to destination Egypt. The EGX30 has stormed 9.23% higher. 2015, South Africa. The oil surged to an all-time high last week and is plus 6.51% this year. And in Kenya, where we closed at a record high every single session last week. Moving on, the DRC will hold a presidential poll in November next year, but under certain conditions. The Election Commission said Thursday, announcing the long-awaited calendar. Voting will take place on November 27, 2016. Election depended on certain conditions, including the availability of funds to organize the polls. Speaking anonymously, one minister swiftly cast doubt on the electoral program, saying that the 1.1 billion sought by the Electoral Commission for the elections was not tenable, even with international aid. So that's an interesting scenario which is still developing, and obviously, you know, I've been talking about that. The lessons of Ouagadougou were felt in Kinshasa. The city of Goma lies at the heart of Mount Nyiragongo, an active volcano situated around 20 kilometers from the city. What a lovely photograph, have a look at that. In his first interview after the AU election in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Mugabe said his focus for the coming year will be uplifting African people from poverty. Should start at home, I think, don't you? South Sudan's cabinet on Friday postponed elections and extended President Salva Kiir's powers for 2 more years, the information minister said. That's essentially sinking a peace agreement that was agreed recently to end 14 months of war. He's been president since the country's independence in 2011. South African all share up 6.51% year to date and at a record high. Jeffrey York tweeted foreigners will be limited to 50-year land leases in South Africa, Zuma says in an early preview of the land bill. Bad idea. To be sent to cabinet. Dollar rand 1166.80, but I think that news around the land will not be supported. Egypt's military said in a statement on state television it had carried out an airstrike against Islamic State targets in Libya at dawn on Monday, a day after the group released a video appearing to show the beheading of 21 Egyptians in Libya. President Fattah al-Sisi has repeatedly said militants based in Libya pose a serious security threat to Egypt. 21 Egyptian Christians who had gone to Libya in search of jobs were marched to a beach, forced to kneel and then beheaded. I put up a photo that Reuters have published, which they grabbed from an undated video. Egyptian pound at 761.18, but a lot of money and lots of change of tone around investors, particularly looking at Egypt. EGX30 up 9.66% year to date. This court does not represent anything to me, thus said Morsi, on trial with 10 other people. Maximum penalty if convicted is death. Nigerian oil share down 20.41% year to date, the worst performing market in Africa and the world. According to the Wall Street Journal, Goodluck Jonathan has asked the US to send combat troops to fight Islamist insurgents. Boko Haram fighters invaded Gombe City on Saturday, crossed into Chad for the first time on Friday. Are they not fighting ISIS? Why can't they come to Nigeria? He's quoted as saying. Put up a photograph of him meeting John Kerry. Boko Haram gunmen are now at Jeka Dafari roundabout in the centre of the city, firing indiscriminately, throwing pamphlets calling on people not to participate in the elections. That's interesting. Nigeria bans dollar resales after FX auction to prop up the Naira. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 4.95% year to date. AFP photo tweeted Chad, the village Nukbua, after it was attacked by Nigeria's Boko Haram rebels. Burundi, Human Rights Watch is calling them up on summary executions by the army and the police. And it all happened, and I'll put up this photograph, a sign welcoming visitors to Murwi, a commune in Burundi's northwestern province of Cibitoke. Chinese-built railway in Angola opens. 1,344-kilometer railway built by the China Railway Construction Corporation for Angola was completed and opened to traffic on Saturday. Linking the coastal city of Lobito in the west and Luau bordering DR Congo, second longest railway built by a Chinese company for Africa after the Tanzanian Zambian Railway. I put up a photograph of a train at Lobito station in Benguela, Angola, February the 11th. Kenyan researcher tweeted, "This is how Nairobi looked in 1900, 1 year after it was started." And I'll put up another photograph of what it looked like recently, and you can see what a dramatic change. Kenya has cut fuel prices, citing lower import costs. I wrote about this previously when I said, as an importer of petroleum, the sharply reduced price will provide a significant stimulus to our economy. It's very grassroots because everyone buys fuel. Kenya shilling 91.607 last. Nairobi all share up 5.56% in 2015, closed at a record every single session last week. There is a link if you want to check any share at the NSC. We're uploading the video with Charles Island. Broadcasters cite coercion to give signals as the spat between the broadcasters and the Communications Authority, who switched off a load of analog signals over the weekend. Africa Oil has managed to raise 11.4 billion shillings in a rare show of confidence in Kenyan blocks at a time of drastic crude price falls. That really is pulling the rabbit out of the hat indeed. Once again, thank you and welcome back.